Good evening. Today is July 24th, 2019, and we're going to call to order the Committee of Infrastructure. And the meeting will start here at 7:01 in the automatic chamber. Can the clerk please call the roll?
I can. Alderman at Large, Michael O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Tom Lopez. Here. Alderman Jan Schmidt is here. Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
And Alderman Ken Gidge is not here.
Okay, very good. At this time, we'll open up.
Also in attendance?
Oh, yes, Alderman Richard Dowd is also in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just if I may, you don't have to change the order. I'm interested in the front door as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll open up the floor at this time to public comment. Seeing none, we do have a presentation then of City Hall, and you have a couple of slides. Well, can we hold that? Can we go out of order? While I got this up, we're going to do something a little bit different. Since I have the computer screen up with the Cotton Road, I'll call that, and then we'll go right into, and that way we're not playing too much with the computer, which we're probably going to do anyways. Right then, so I will have, let's see.
New business ordinances?
Right, there is none, right?
New business ordinance 019-048, authorizing a stop sign on Cotton Road at its intersection with Cotton Road Connector. Mr. Chair, I move to recommend final passage.
Okay. Alderman Dow, do you have anything to add on this particular?
I was contacted by the Department of Public Works to sponsor this legislation. It evidently came to their attention that there's been near accidents at this site, and they want to put a stop sign to control traffic better.
Okay. Yeah, and from where my cursor is basically pointed to happy hand here, that's about the general vicinity that
Yeah,
we've
that's the
come to
general
an agreement
vicinity.
that we'll be talking about. And so this is the Press Cafe that I think what we're talking about here, and this will kind of make it a safer intersection being such.
That's the plan.
Okay. Is everybody got that? Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we'll call Kim Kleiner up to do a presentation. This has to do with the City Hall front entrance. And Ms. Kleiner, do you want to, yes, all the happy stuff here? There you go.
Kim Kleiner, Director of Administrative Services. So the mayor asked that I join you this evening and quickly go through a project that we're working on. This is actually our building department, our purchasing department, and risk are working collectively on this project. It started back in May. So I quickly like to go through with you some of the issues with our current door and what brought this to light. So currently, the door doesn't close properly. And you can see in that picture, the door is very difficult to open, both from the inside and from the outside. And it doesn't automatically lock, meaning we can't lock it from the inside. And there's no access control system on that door like there are on our other doors. There's a lot of issues with the door frame around the door. It has weathered. And the interference at the door jamb, that door jamb cannot be replaced. So the door is at an age where there really is nothing that we can do to it to repair it. Here you'll see because the door doesn't close, there's actually weathering to the inside of the tile floor. So that's if you're looking from the inside heading out, you can see where that tile has eroded. It's even more pleasant to look at it when you're coming in the door. And you can really see, and we want to maintain that current architecture of our front entryways. So that was really important in looking at this project, that whatever construction company we chose could replace that and make it seamless with the other tile in the entryway. So this actually went out to bid on May 14th. We had a couple responses, none that we thought fit the project in our eyes, so we went back out to bid. And we got a couple other bidders at that time, one of whom we chose. So the project includes demolition and site preparation. And then this project is totally inclusive. So the company chosen has to not only do the door replacement, fix the framing, fix the tile replacement, and also work with our vendor on the security control access. We wanted one vendor that would perform the whole project. Factors that we considered were obviously energy efficiency. Now, we know we've had some of our energy heading out the door, and obviously we want to always keep our energy costs low. We wanted a welcoming aesthetic. We wanted to maintain the same color and direction. So it's, right now it's bronze with a reflective glass, and that's what we asked for in the bid. We didn't want to change the architectural look of City Hall. That was very important to the mayor. And we said that the door must open out as it does now. And then cost is always a large factor with the city. We wanted to keep the costs low. I can tell you, we received bids all over the place. It really is an expensive project, but we think we've gotten the best bid. Security, so we needed something that we could lock should we need to from the inside. So we're actually looking at if risk management, who currently controls and works with our access control system, needed to lock that door for whatever reason in today's climate, we needed them to have the access to do that from within risk management. So this vendor will work with our access control system at the time that they're installing it. And currently, our IT department handles that along with risk. Then making sure that that tile was of similar material to maintain the original design. Which leads us to, so we looked at this point, having a double door entryway. The entryway does provide enough space to put in a double door, and the thought was that a double door is just naturally more welcoming. And we wanted to be able to really give that welcoming feel to City Hall. It will be bronze, it will have the reflective glass, we will have the city seal etched within the glass as it currently is. And looking from the street view, this is the design that the construction company has given us. It's North Point, and although the contract doesn't require by amount to go to finance, we wanted to share with the committee that the cost is $24,869, so it's close. And we wanted to share that with you so that you are aware. And if I can take any questions?
Any questions by members of the board? Alderman Dowd?
Is this gonna have a card swipe for after hours if mayor or treasurer or anybody wants to get in, or?
We are not going to card swipe the front door. Generally, most of our staff comes through the back door. We were more concerned with being able to lock it remotely if we needed to. We could, so looking at it and the wiring that would be required to put in a card swiper at that door, it's going to interrupt the framing that's currently there. So we really didn't see it as a need, considering the side doors and the back.
Follow-up?
Follow-up?
And you said insulation, thermal glass,
It is, yeah.
any type of security glass like we're putting in our schools?
No, it did not.
Okay.
Any further questions, members of the board? Ms. Klein, I would have to say that I do agree with you. I think a double door is more attractive. I like the idea. I was going to suggest the city seal proper on it. But for our folks at home, so they can understand, they see the stairs and they see the double doors and they don't see handicap access.
Correct.
But we do have handicap access to the city hall. We are compliant, and can you explain where that handicap access actually is in the rear of the building?
It
So
is.
it's,
Yes.
Right.
So, I think that's something that's been looked at. It would be extremely expensive to have any additional handicapped access in the front of the building. And you would have to deal with the kind of historical architecture of the front of the building. But our rear, as you have stated, Chair, is handicapped accessible. That's where the parking spots
parking
are
is, right.
located. And most of the time, that's where we find that our citizens enter the building from.
okay, very good. Now, I have you down as a presentation. Do you need a vote from us on this or anything, or just an agreement?
No, the mayor just wanted to make sure that it was okay with the committee and that there was no problems and that we had informed you on the
Well, thank you,
action.
Ms. Clymer, for the in transparency, because I think, like I say, I think you guys chose well again. The double doors will look good and everything, and thank you to the mayor for keeping us informed of this. Alderman Dowd?
Does this have to go to that special finance committee that's coming up, or?
No. So it's just under the $25,000 threshold. But we wanted to be transparent, and that's why we brought the cost to you, because it's close.
Like if you buy a doormat, then it's over.
There you go.
Alderman Dowd, you know what they say,
skip
only
the
in
doormat.
horseshoes with the
Yeah.
almost. Right, exactly. Any other further questions? No, thank you, Ms. Kleiner, thank you so
welcome.
much. Can we have some fun stuff back, if you don't mind?
You
Thank
can.
you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Well, how come we lost it?
Presentation's over.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
And it's
All right. Do you want to try to get back on the screen? Yes, okay. Because we're going to need it in the next thing. Now, we do have items that are still on the table, tabled in committee, and one of them is a petition to release a facade easement. That has been referred, and this is for the Amherst Street property. That has been referred to the planning board and is still in continuing, and it's going to be discussed at their August 8, 2019 meeting. So we'll wait pending that particular meeting before we'll bring it back to the board. Okay, I'll go over to the clock now to get into
That was
147.
Easement, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Alderman Dowd.
Okay, petition for the easement, continued to,
Yeah, well, what we're gonna need, can the clerk, make a motion to remove from the table so that we may be able to discuss R 19-147?
so moved.
Okay. All those in favor of moving, taking off from the table, R 19-147, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, okay. Yes,
I just wanted
Alderman
to make an
Lopez.
observation. The agenda actually says regarding the petition to release facade easement, that it's continued to 8/8/29. Is that the planning board or is that our meeting? Our next,
Oh, yeah,
is that
excuse me, I
tabled
got, I am.
We didn't
I'm
wanna
on to the
remove
wrong
it.
one. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Can we rescind the vote to rescind it? Because I do have here, I got confused in my ordinance numbers. The one I really wanted to do was 148. On 147, it is, we have the Mines Fall Park Advisory Committee is not going to meet until August 5th. So can we keep 147 back, move it back onto the table until we hear back from the Mines Fall Park people? All in favor? Any discussion on that?
Wait a minute, what we want to do is.
yeah,
on
we
this
just went through
one,
all three of them.
on
Okay,
the
yeah, that was,
facade.
we're just leaving that.
Okay, we're just going to leave that on the
Right.
table. So Schmidt said,
This, I meant for you to do the other one.
Ah,
So what we're
gotcha.
gonna do is basically, we're gonna keep, I don't think we need to vote, we're just gonna keep,
right,
right, 147 and remain that on the table. And everybody's familiar with that one?
That's not
Yes,
147,
okay, very good,
that's-
just to be clear. All right, outstanding. Alderman Lopez, thank you for that.
I was making a different point, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We got there
All
in the
right.
end.
What I wanted to do.
you have to do 147.
Uh,
I was talking about the one
That's
that's.
the Pine Street
Yes.
property. So shall I do that next?
No, that's the one on Pine Street. That's gonna appear before the Mines Fall Park Advisory Committee on
Gotcha.
August 5th.
So we'll leave it on the table.
Yep, no, it's no problem. It was my fault. We tabled it on June 17th, but it hasn't appeared on their agenda yet. So we'll wait to hear from the good people from Mine Falls Park Advisory. What I would like the clerk to do, if so willing, is to make a motion on R 19-148.
Amending the authorization for the sale of land on Bridge Street and Sanders Street. I'd like to move, recommend final passage.
Well, before that, can we take it off the table?
This one
This is another item that was
Oh, my
tabled on
goodness.
6/17/2019. It's summertime, don't it?
I
Okay,
don't know,
that's all right.
it's here, okay, well, then I
We're doing
recommend we take it
okay.
from the table. I move that we do so.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of taking R 19-148 off the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. I will now call up Mr. Pronia. Would you like to come up and we can have the discussion? And may we have Mr. Cummings come up with the
I will not take the insult of Mr. Prunier.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Quite all right.
If you
No,
sit
I
next to
had
her, you get
Mr.
that little beam
from
of light
today.
too.
Early today. Excuse me. I'm going to yield to Mr. Cummings to explain the city's position on this first, please.
I would be happy to, Mr. Chair. I will keep my comments brief because I do know we have Attorney Perlman here to speak on behalf of his client, but I want the record to reflect, again, and before I begin, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I'm here to echo the Business Industrial Development Authority, what we colloquially refer to as BIDA's support of this resolution 19-148, and also make sure that you understand the administration here in the city is also supportive of this. this legislation. This legislation is essentially, I believe, the Fourth Amendment to a contract that the city entered into some years ago, where it contemplates an overall development plan working with a third-party private developer, a master developer, if you will, for 20-plus acres over on the east side of the city to be redeveloped mainly for mixed-use development, but thought process being is multifamily development. I will defer to Attorney Perlman on the details, but I do want to make sure it's understood that not only BIDA, but also the planning board here in the city have made a favorable recommendation for this legislation before you.
Okay. Mr. Proman, please excuse me for calling you by the wrong name.
That's quite all right. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. My name is Andy Perlman, attorney with Prunier and Perlman. I'm here on behalf of Renaissance at Nashua Limited Liability Company, and also with Tim, along with BIDA, as Renaissance and BIDA are largely partners in developing out this Bridge Street project. Mr. Chairman, members, we're asking for your positive recommendation to the Board of Aldermen on Resolution 148. This is the Fourth Amendment to this development agreement. And what we're doing with this Fourth Amendment is that we are setting a purchase price for the two lots that you see up on the screen, 40 Bridge Street and 10 Sanders Street. We're setting a price for a payment in lieu of an athletic field to the city. We're setting some deadlines and benchmarks for Renaissance to hit. That was very important to the members of the BIDA committee. And we're setting a price at which, if we bring in more than 147 units, that's now on a conceptual plan, there's a payment to the city of $7,500 for each unit over 147. So this addresses a lot of issues that were raised over the past year or two between the parties. We think we have a good agreement, and we are hoping for your positive recommendation.
Okay. Now, just for the public at home, this particular area here was a former John Mansfield plant, Sanders Street, which is shown there, was the main entrance into the side factory for that. There was an intention to put a sports field, but you're going to make a payment of $775,000 in lieu of the rectangular field, and that's correct, right?
Essentially.
Essentially.
Correct.
And some of that money can be used to maintain existing or whatever.
So I actually want to be very clear on this point.
Very
because-
good.
If I could, Mr. Chair, because I've heard some gossip, innuendo, secondhand conversations on this part. The legislation before you doesn't contemplate how the $775,000 is to be used, and what the desire, the wish of the city is going to have to be thought in a separate piece of legislation that will need to be filed. I can tell you that the Business and Industrial Development Authority has represented to me that they have a desire to see whatever the proceeds are above and beyond what it would take to produce a new rectangular athletic field, that money be set aside for the future use of BIDA so they can continue doing the good work that they're doing on behalf of the city in terms of redeveloping or rehabilitating blighted and properties. I also want to be clear to say that it is also my understanding that members of the Board of Aldermen here, as well as some members of the Planning Board, have different opinions as to how that money should be used. So I think it's going to be a conversation that's going to need to be had. I think it's a good conversation for a later date, when we have all the stakeholders and all the various parties in the room, so we can have that conversation. But we're not even there yet. So we're already spending money that we actually don't even have. So all we're trying to do is set up the framework right now, so we can actually have that good conversation when the time comes.
Any questions by members of the committee? Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, through the chair to Director Cummings, you had said this was going to be mixed-use family housing?
No, I believe what I said was, it was the overall master plan for this area, this 20-ish acres, the original concept was for a mixed-use development. The major thrust of it would be multifamily development. That is my understanding as to the concept plan as it was originally conceived back in 2010 and then updated along the way with a couple different variations. And this stays true to that, current theme or thought process.
Alderman Lopez.
Is there anything making that plan for family housing to be concrete, or is it just a general idea?
Oh, no, there is, absolutely. So for that, a multifamily to be concrete, the
By concrete, I mean solid, not actual concrete, by the way, not building
Understood, yep.
bunkers.
There's gonna be a couple plans that will need to be approved by the various entities here in the city. If it's a concept plan, BIDA will need to approve it. If it's a site plan, the planning board would need to approve it. But there will be approval processes along the way to make sure that the city gets what was originally contemplated in both the concept plan and the master development agreement. I'm just letting you know that this amendment stays to the spirit to what was originally contemplated.
Okay.
Any other questions by members? Alderman Jettie.
So could someone talk about, kind of tell us what the original plan was and how this differs from the original plan and why a change is necessary?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the major thrust of the change is the original development agreement contemplated a rectangular athletic field on site in this general vicinity of the development. But as plans further developed and, became more crystallized, I think it became clear that that wasn't going to be possible. And so in lieu of that, putting it on site and to be able to move this project forward, the idea was we would take a payment and we could then replicate the field somewhere else. And that is the major change. In addition to that, as Attorney Perlman outlined, and I'm sure he could go into more detail, we also put in some timelines and other further clarity into the contract, because when the contract was originally anticipated, a lot of this was still gray and amorphous, and it was back 9, 10 years ago, whatever it may be. So it just made sense now as we're doing a project to kind of clean it up a little bit.
Follow-up?
So when you say that the athletic field is no longer possible, why not?
So I'll defer to Attorney Perlman, but my understanding is to achieve the unit count that they're looking to achieve, which, and again, the city is very much desirous to see. As we all know, we need housing here in the city. It's a trade-off, and we needed to have a give a take, and we understand that the athletic field couldn't necessarily be accommodated.
Follow-up?
I hate to keep asking the same question, but are you saying that it's not possible to build an athletic field there? Or you're saying that to get the number of units that the developer would like to have, we're sacrificing the athletic field so he can put more units there?
Well, I wouldn't want to phrase the conversation as the quote-unquote the developer would like to have, because I can tell you from the beginning that BIDA and this administration has worked in concert with the developer to have a plan that would allow for a mixed-use multifamily development of substantial density, right? So it had always originally been anticipated that potentially an athletic field could be there, but we had that conversation very early on before engineering occurred and before any real analysis of the site occurred. And so as that became more clear, I think to achieve the unit count that we're currently talking about, it became very, very much understood that we wouldn't be able to have the athletic field.
So again, if I may, so whether it's the developer or BIDA or the city, the three of you combined, I guess, want more units than you're able to build without sacrificing the athletic field. And you need the athletic field in order to build the number of units you want. Is that what you're saying? If you wanted to build an athletic field, could you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, to help Alderman Jettie out, if I may, part of this money, if we allow this, like Director Cummings mentioned, may go to another couple of projects. One of the projects is maybe we can do the quality of a park somewhere else.
Correct.
Go to AstroTurf for a rectangular field and much improve. And talking about lights, which is key to have for particularly adult sports, you know, the people of the community that want to play those type of sports, soccer in the evening. So there might be some benefit to, so this is like one of those tit for tats. And if I may remind the Alderman, and perhaps Director Cummings could speak to this, as we go down Bridge Street a ways, and as we look at the the intersection there, coming over the bridge, we did have plans in the presentation, was it not by the DOT, to look at this particular crisscross that we're looking at here and to enhance it to a better traffic flow. And part of the plans at that time was not a rectangular playing field, but to I think, a residential garden spot where people within that community, particularly the Renaissance and everything, would, once they could get across Bridge Street, you know, but be able to enjoy the park atmosphere at that time and fix that little crisscross that's kind of antiquated a bit there. Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so to just echo those sentiments, and again, can't say definitively today what we're gonna use the money for, but the thought process could be is to put some of that money, and again, our understanding roughly is it's about $350,000 what it would take to have a rectangular athletic field. If the city so desired, you could put that towards another field in the city, create a new field, do an enhancement, do AstroTurf, or as the chairman alluded to, there is a traffic improvement project currently underway with the X, and it is contemplated about where 40-44 is, doing some sort of park or some sort of nice recreational community neighborhood asset that folks could enjoy, and you could, you know, put funds towards that. That is all within the realm of a possibility, and that's why we are all in agreement that we need to try to move this project forward, because it will, without any question, improve the neighborhood, because it's right now rather undeveloped. We haven't seen really much economic investment in this area of the city, and we're just starting to get it, and we need to further to maximize that benefit.
Alderman Lopez.
So I have some reservations about this. First, because you were looking at having an amenity removed from the neighborhood that was planned to be there. And in my mind, like, the Renaissance project had a lot of amenities in the past that were proposed that have been dialed back or removed, similar to this, the waterfront and all that kind of stuff. So I'm concerned about how the neighborhood particularly would respond to this that lives there now, and whether they would be particularly open to another number of buildings. I'm also thinking about the traffic flow, and that part of that area redesign is because of the increased traffic because of the Renaissance project. So adding more housing to reach the density that they're looking for, I can see why that would be appealing to BIDA, to the developer, even to the city, which is trying to solve housing issues, but at the same time, you know, making sure that we don't overbuild in a certain area is a concern to me. Because the other boards have recommended this, I'm kind of willing to just go in the direction that they're going. But I am concerned about the open-endedness of funding for this, what would have been a soccer field now going into a later conversation. I would like to insist that we have the conversation and ensure that we put the soccer field somewhere else, because soccer is a very sought after and attractive sport in Nashua. We've lost revenue and destination appeal because we haven't supported soccer in the past. And I know that each of the fields are competitively sought after. There's a waiting list. It's a point of tension where people who are trying to develop soccer teams and athletic skills and all that kind of stuff, they're not able to find space. So I would just want to encourage the board that if we do move forward with this, that we do need to preserve that soccer field elsewhere in the city and the funding for that use, rather than saying, well, convert it into a garden. One amenity is as good as another. There's no way you're going to want to have a soccer game in the middle of a bunch of roads. So I just think we should be mindful of that we are losing something that we plan to put there for a reason. I don't think anybody rolled the dice and said, oh, let's put a soccer field in there. I think they looked at what do we actually need in the city for other reasons too. So those are just my thoughts. I think I'll support this, but I am very mindful that we should earmark at least the money for a soccer field to go elsewhere in the city.
Alderman Schmidt.
One thing that we wanted to consider, I'm on BETA as well. One thing we wanted to consider is that if we're going to change anything about this part of the city, that park or whatever field should be in that location. It should be there for those people. And that's one of the issues that we're dealing with right now. We're looking for a piece of city land that might be able to be used for a soccer field. If not, it could make a really nice garden. It could be a children's play area. It could be walkway along the river. But we'll have that little bundle of money to manage. I think we need to stay in that area because I think they deserve to have the amenity that would give them. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor.
May, Mr. Chairman, last week or whenever the planning board, I lose track of time, the planning board had a positive recommendation back to the Board of Aldermen on this ordinance, or resolution rather, but they did so with the caveat that the funds that were to go to a rectangular field stay in this area of town, stay in this Bridge Street, East Hall Street neighborhood. So that might be something the committee may want to consider as well.
I would like to also to remind my committee here that this X pattern of the traffic, Alderman Schmidt and I are completely ecstatic with the governor's not signing and allowing to passage the rail bill. And if the people realize we're right down the throat here of the potential designated where the rail station is. So when the DOT and everybody else is talking about the rejuvenation of that particular area, particularly the traffic pattern, it's going to really enhance as we build the pieces of the puzzle going forward. Will enhance that, yes, right there. So people are going to need to get to Hudson. So to have that traffic pattern resolved to some degree, and that's another thing to consider as we move on. But we're getting a little bit off track, so let's, no pun intended. But Alderman Lopez, I share your concerns. And, being on the fire department, we had this old adage, sometimes it's better, we have a fire, to get multiple lines on the fire, but it's always better to get one good line. At least you were extinguishing it, you know what I mean? And if we can get to stay within the focus of the park, I am agreement. I mean, if it comes down in the future, a quality park, yes, AstroTurf lights and everything, you're greatly going to enhance something that's going to be used a lot more. I think this would be good, and that money could be very well spent to that. And sounds like we'll have a discussion upon another day on how to do that. So that's good. Alderman, yes, Director Cummings. Excuse
Thank
me.
you. I think that's the critical part is we make sure we're cognizant, and I very much am keeping it in the forefront of my mind that we have a separate deliberate conversation. We have DPW at the table. We have BITA at the table. We have members of the planning board. We have members of the Board of Aldermen. We have the mayor and key people, including the neighborhood residents. And you have a conversation about what it is that we would like to see. But to be able to have that conversation, we need to have a pathway forward. And this legislation before you does that. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I hope this committee will make a favorable recommendation.
Very good. Other comments, Alderman Jettie?
I'm kind of in the same point of view as Alderman Lopez. I acknowledge that, we as a committee are hearing about this, and, we don't have the extensive knowledge that maybe, when this thing was first created, the people had at the time, or what director, the knowledge that Director Cummings or Attorney Perlman has about this whole project. But what concerns me is I'm looking at an area of the city which is is fairly well developed as far as density is concerned. There's a project that this Renaissance project that anticipated providing additional housing to the city, which is valuable, and we appreciate that. But my memory is not perfect, but I know that part of the project is that we had to move the skateboard park from that area, and we've got valuable waterfront there that we would. It would be great to to have developed so that we can take more advantage of the rivers there. And I see, a project that anticipated having maybe it's not a rectangle, maybe it's more like a parallelogram, but some geometric figure there where the old John Mansville plant was. That it was anticipated that would be an athletic field for that neighborhood, and I also know that there's a developer that's developing the old part of the old railroad yard with additional housing, a couple of hundred on one side of Temple Street, and I don't know, another 100 or so on the other side of Temple Street. So I'm seeing that there's going to be an increase in housing, which means an increase in people, an increase in automobiles in a neighborhood that is already kind of congested. And what appears to be the one remaining open space that we have, we're giving up. And I know we're getting 775,000. I hope that that's an appropriate amount of compensation for it. But then I hear talk about that money is, what we're going to do with that money is going to be subject to some later discussion. I'm just afraid that we're giving up a piece of open land that could be used for recreation, filling it up with more housing, and I just hope that that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where, I mean, once you put houses on there, we're not going to tear them down and return it to an open field. So that's going to be gone. And what happens within Bridge Street and East Hollis Street, remains to be seen. But I mean, I'm going to, support this, reluctantly because I bow to the planning board recommendation, but, I don't know the full extent of the planning board's recommendation. All I see is, in our agenda that they recommended, that the money be used to maintain existing fields or the creation of new fields, not, they don't, I don't know if they said it elsewhere, Attorney Perlman, but there's nothing that I see that limits it to this neighborhood, and how that fits into the recreation, Parks and Recreation's desires, I don't know. I mean, I'll go along with this, but I wanted to voice my concerns, Director Cummings.
Director Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Alderman Jettie. And your points are well taken, and I hear you loud and clear with them. I will say that that's one of the good things about us coming forward with the master plan. And I think as we have the master plan conversation, we will be able to address some of these issues because, and I'm glad to hear we're not going to penalize this legislation this evening with some of these concerns because this whole area of the city is zoned in a way to do exactly what is being contemplated. And so whether it was this site or another site, this question or this issue or these concerns that are being raised are all good conversations to be had, but the project applicants who would be coming before you would have a right to be able to do these projects. And so as we have that master plan conversation, we absolutely can ask the questions as to whether the zoning in this area of the city needs to be changed or tweaked and further looked at to take into these concerns that are being raised here today. Relative to this specific site, all I can say is we're under a contractual obligation. This was a contract that was entered into. Again, I'm not lying, and Attorney Perlman can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but something that's longer than 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. I don't, in that range, where it was always understood that we would be developing, and the concept plan for this area contemplated just under 800 units of housing. So we're not going to realize or see anything near that type of development, but that was the plan that we were bound to work under.
Alderman Lopez.
I take some issue with characterizing our discussion, which I consider to be our responsibility, as penalizing legislation. And I don't think that area has a right to be developed because it was planned a certain way 10 to 15 years ago, because a lot of plans were involved in that design, and those elements have not showed up. At this point, I believe all we have put in so far are buildings, and it was a legitimate concern of the neighborhood because I was involved in the original Renaissance Downtown Visualize Nashua discussions. Those neighbors were very concerned about what was going in there, how it was going to affect the character of the neighborhood. So I think we do need to be very conscious of that. And at no point should we say, well, there's a right to just develop this a certain way. Because while a master plan is important, that master plan needs to be developed along the lines of what's best for people living in Nashua now, as well as what our long-term plans are. And I'm very conscious of that because, again, I was involved at the earlier parts of it. I know there were talks about boat launches, about waterfronts, about restaurants, and all that kind of stuff, and it just doesn't look like any of that is really happening here. We're about to trade a soccer field, and I'm not going to die on the hill of a single soccer field. I do not see a soccer field fitting in that space, but who knows? Maybe there's some other part of the neighborhood that I'm not aware of. So I think it's kind of be a wash when it comes to that amenity, which is particularly popular in Nashua. I do think that there is still space within that little X to put some kind of reasonable green space, and I think it's really important that we do that because when you put that many people in an area without even like a small park, then that's not good for anybody. I am also fully aware of the need for more housing stock, but I do not believe that the projects at Renaissance Downtown have been accessible to the majority of Nashuans, and I don't think they're even marketing towards Nashuans. I think they're being marketed towards people coming to Nashua. So there is a housing shortage in Nashua, but that's because people live in Nashua now who need housing. So I don't see this as particularly contributing to that solution. I think luckily we have other housing projects that will be probably more suited for that.
Alderman Jettie, did you have your hand up?
Did I?
If you want to speak, go right
Does that
ahead.
by itself?
You may yield if you wish.
I just wanted to add that, having a soccer, replacing this potential soccer field with a soccer field at Udicki Farms, for example, I mean,
Never gonna happen.
these kids, I mean, I was a coach in the National Youth Soccer League, and we really had to fight for places to practice, spaces to practice. And for these kids and all of these new kids that are going to be coming in and occupying these new housing units, where are they going to go? To another field in the southwest part of town, in Ward 5, which we would welcome. These kids are going to have to get there. They're going to have to be transported by their parents, and a lot of their parents won't be able to do that because they're working, and it's just
In traffic.
I'm just concerned that we're giving up something that we won't be able to replace. But I hope that that Commissioner, the Director Cummings has thought about these things, and we'll have a plan to present that will satisfy us.
I would like to say I'm comfortable with this deal. Surprised nobody's mentioned it, but John Mansfield Company used to make asbestos products on that particular site. John Mansfield, in the old days, before we were educated in such negative things of asbestos, we had it on the hoods of our cars, and how many times I banged across trying to set the dweller gap to, which a whole generation doesn't know what a dweller gap is. But anyways, but, those in the Navy and everything else, everything was asbestos. You went to school, it was asbestos. But asbestos is fine, and I don't want to say, Katie Botador go running out because any asbestos, but there are several sites. John Mansfield gave a lot of asbestos to the city to use as landfill, and I bet a lot of people would be surprised where they actually are. I know where some are, and they're fine as long as they stay encapsulated. And with this particular site, when you have kids running up and down the field, I don't think that's encapsulation, and I kind of questioned that. So when I saw this proposal, I think, like you say, with the building upon it, you're talking a lawn, you're talking other type of different things that will work towards encapsulation and keep that particular area safe. I think there's better areas that we could try to strive to go, and I'm willing to do with that. I agree with you, Alderman Jettie. I, too, was coaching NYSL. They gave me a little strip of land next to Fairgrounds Elementary School, and I prayed that my kids wouldn't put a ball through the window. But you're right. We are kind of tight for space and everything else, but I think it's the quality of space. And I like, again, if we could get into a AstroTurf field somewhere, lights and everything would be better. So I'm willing to support this myself and to move it, and then have the debate later on what we will do with the funding and everything. So, okay, Alderman Lopez?
Just so we're not taking it for granted, this is cleared by the EPA, because,
Yes.
that
Yes.
was like a Superfund area, and with all the discussion at the tannery, they were saying that you could only have a soccer field or a parking lot over certain
And
types of.
If I may clarify, and Director Cummings, please support me, or if I misspoke or anything else like that. I don't think it would be available we wouldn't be sitting here discussing this if there was any.
No, I just felt
thought.
like we
I
should
mean,
ask on the record to
it's-
clarify. We did.
I just like to stipulate it, it's not as clean and pristine as some other areas within the municipality. okay? We do have other places that people don't even know, and as long as it doesn't get disturbed, it is perfect. I think there's not a particular health problem, and the construction will be appropriate. They know what it was there, and I think Mr. Perlman can agree that the construction company would do diligence with that. They know how to handle such issues and everything else like that. But I personally, the reason I brought it up, I would feel comfortable to have the children at another location than a former asbestos plant, you know. And I wish I had a nickel for every time I walked through there at 3 o'clock in the morning being on the fire department. We didn't know about the good asbestos stuff back then, you know, but it was a lot of fun anyways. That's why you did it. So, any other further comments? I've spoken enough. No? Then may I call for a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll have passage of R 19-148. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Cummings, can you stay for 5 minutes more?
Happy to, happy
Yeah,
to.
in case there is a question. Mr. Perlman, thank you, sir. Before us this evening, too, is R 19-150, authorizing the city of Nashua to enter into a license agreement for a parking area off Artillery Lane. As the board remembers that? Well, we sent it over to the good folks at Public Works, and they tabled it on June 27th. And so we have not heard anything back from them. We tabled it on the 17th. They tabled it on the 27th. It remains now at this time in limbo. So I don't see any need to take it off the particular table. Just to mention, it's a situation that I think is kind of raw that we're going to have to, you know, take a look at. You know, it's a commercial property adjacent to it, speaking of parks and everything else. So we'll probably look to see what's a good solution for everybody with this one. So I think in order to do that, I'm willing to keep it on the table for now until we get better information on that. Everybody in agreement with that? Love it. Outstanding. Very good. And we'll keep on the table, because we're still working at, and while Mr. Cummings is here, this is still on the burners. Ordinance 1936 designating additional section of Bauer Street one-way easterly. We're still working with the stakeholders of the neighborhood on that particular issue.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and if I may, last time I checked on this was probably maybe 2 months ago now. And I know engineering had solicited a quote, and when I say engineering, our city engineering department was soliciting a quote and trying to line up counts of cars with the Nashua Regional Planning Commission to try to get some further data for the proposal that they were entertaining to try to have a study done in this area to address the issue. And so I'm not exactly sure if engineering's executed on that proposal, so I would have to check back. But that's the last I knew of it. So I'll look into it and follow up.
Well, thank you, because, you know, I do realize, and I think everybody realizes, you change one thing, you might end up changing something,
Exactly,
and we do have the time to do it correctly, so let's do it correctly, so we'll leave that one on the table. Okay, if that's what the members all in agreement?
If I could just add,
Yes, please.
We've changed a bunch of things in that neighborhood, including adding 2 new housing places and all that kind of thing. So the conversations that I had with Director Cummings regarding it were that region needed to be looked at, because otherwise we'll have a domino effect of we changed one thing over here, we changed one thing over there.
Right.
And there's other issues. So that was what made me particularly supportive of the master planning process, because there's a lot of issues that are interrelated, such as traffic flow, parking, overnight parking, that we've been looking at them piecemeal, and we really need to be looking at them in totality.
Holistically. Yep. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
You know, I would like to come up with something where all stakeholders are on board with it, than partial. Okay. All right then, general discussion? Alderman Lopez.
As a follow-up to my earlier comment about on-street overnight parking, I am aware that a number of areas have been reaching out one at a time with regards to, can we have parking here? Can we have parking here? Can we be able to park nearby? And I know Director Cummings' office is working on reviewing the most frequently requested streets at the city clerk's office, and then figuring out which ones are amenable to fire, amenable to police, which ones should get permits, which ones should get parking spaces. So we are working on that, and I just wanted to make that comment so the public knew that we hadn't forgotten. And then Alderman Clemmons and I were working on adding to the tenant bill of rights, which is supposed to be signed as part of any lease agreement in the city, some kind of recognition that a landlord really needs to tell an incoming tenant what parking they can provide and accurately describe the city's ability and responsibilities in providing parking, because surface area can't just be created. We just took out a soccer field. I mean, in the denser inner city neighbors where people are just like, well, the city's responsible for providing parking, it's not, and it can't. Like, it literally, there's no way to do it. So there are some areas where the tenant needs to be informed that the place they're moving into is going to have a difficult parking situation, because you're creating really unfair expectations on the part of that person who feel like that they are entitled to more support than the city can feasibly give. So we are working on those things, and I just wanted to comment on those.
No, thank you, Alderman Lopez. I mean, one of my greatest fears, I mean, it's happening today. People petition and they come up or asking, and they say there's not enough spaces. And then I asked the question, did you get approved by the planning board to have 4 apartments?
The what now?
And, huh?
Yeah.
You know, because the planning board would say, well, where are you going to park the cars? And now the landlords, and I don't want to paint the landlords as bad people. That's not the issue here. It's their property. They have the right, but within certain aspects of it, you divide up some of these buildings that were just 2-family homes into 4 to 6 apartments. Everybody wants a car. When does it become, or why does it become our responsibility? And you look at it. So we got to gingerly walk that street, no pun intended, but to come up with it and to really look at it. And quite comically, I went down to visit my sister in Everett, Mass., and I swear that it is, I think everybody now moving into the neighborhood has to be handicapped, because there's handicap parking all the way down the street. So whenever I go to visit her, I have to walk a half a mile. It would be better to take the T, I think, to, but, and, it can, and Everett's very much in some of the density, equivalent to our density in some of the neighborhoods and everything. So it's something, and I'm glad you're coming up with that tenant bill of rights, because I think that would help to alleviate, because I hate to see somebody come and get an apartment, then all of a sudden find out that, something that they should have looked into, and to assist the young people who are coming in. And yes, Director Cummings, please.
It's happening, and so I applaud Alderman Lopez, Alderman Clemmons for this initiative. I can tell you, it's something that the parking office here in the city deals with regularly, and we feel terribly, because we know that these individuals were renting apartments, and they come in and they are acting under the assumption that they can park on the street, and with our current regulations being the way it is, that is sometimes not the case, and they have limited means, and so they don't necessarily know what to do, and they feel stuck, and we really feel very, very badly, because we're stuck in a hard place at that point. So if we can do anything to help move that along, it's something that I think would help the city tremendously.
Yeah, because I'm clearly, and if I may follow up, I mean, I'm not against overnight parking, and particularly coming from the fire department end of it. Well, what happens if you had a fire at 2:00 in the afternoon? Does it matter at 2:00 in the morning? You're going to do what you're going to have to do. That argument never really cut any mustard with me. But the thing is, overnight parking, once that is given away, it'll never come back. So we've got to look at it and do it very, I'm not saying not to do it, but we'd be very methodical and have the plan to come up with that's fair to all the neighborhoods. And it's, from what my swimming in the shallow end of the pool on it, it's tough. It's a very tough issue, so, but I'm with the best committee to work it out, but it's tougher than you think, so,
We haven't figured out
Yeah.
how to park cars sideways yet.
Yeah, there you
so.
go.
yeah. Mhm. All right, any other general discussion? Yes.
So on that point, I know that we, we've had this discussion before. I'm in my second year on the board, and so sometime between the last year and a half or so, we talked about overnight parking and, the issues of, um, some of which we've just brought up again about, people, the whole problem with single-family homes being developed into multifamily homes, people with one car in the family, if they were lucky, to now, you know, everybody who's 16 years old seems to have their own vehicle. And our laws that prohibit overnight parking, has had I think an unfortunate side effect in that, where you had, downtown properties where you had lawns and gardens and uh, trees and hedges and things have all been, not all, but a lot of them have been stripped in order to provide on-site parking because they can't park on the street. And so we've talked about this before, and and I'm wondering, are we all waiting for somebody to come up with a brilliant idea, or is our esteemed parking department
We all love brilliant ideas, but I think we're methodically looking at it. I mean, from my past experience, probably this is my personal fear. My mother was that lady that shoveled the spot in front of the house. Director Cummins probably can picture what I'm talking about. She had lawn furniture designating that that was the official O'Brien parking spot. She even did the downstairs tenant, spot for them, the two spots for the house. She guarded them vigorously. She hung her underwear off on a stick to make Maggie straws to say that was her parking space, and it's tough. And this is where we're basically heading to. I mean, I grew up with 5 brothers, and the big thing was trying to get the keys off the old man for a Friday night date. Most of my dating was done off an MBTA bus. We didn't have the parking, and we're getting to that, particularly in the downtown area. So we're trying to be guarded. That's the only thing that I'm saying, And did you have your hand?
I did.
Yes.
I'm thinking maybe it's time for a parking study over the whole city,
Right.
where we can actually make some good plans going forward on what's where and how. Yes?
Yeah.
I'd like to echo those sentiments that Alderwoman Schmidt just said. I think it is. So if I could step back for a second. So prior to this infrastructure committee in a previous board of aldermen, when I first got here to the city, we spent a year and a half, and we looked in a rather detailed way in the downtown area and expanded overnight parking where we could. Since that time, we have on a case-by-case basis evaluated differing streets and making sure that it met the criteria that the city set out, and if it did, then we proposed it as one-off type of solutions where we heard from the neighborhood that there was an interest. It's still pretty clear to me that there isn't consensus among the Board of Aldermen that the entire city should go one way or the other. And so and so anyway, so with then, that being said, I also heard very loud and clear from the Board of Aldermen, a few months back that, a master plan for the parking garages and the parking lots, and definitely from a maintenance standpoint, but then also relative to managing parking and making sure that the city understood what were some best practices as well as industry standards, today for managing parking was necessary. So, we're definitely going to be looking forward to having some sort of plan in place that can give everyone the comfort level to move forward.
Anybody got a magic wand? That's why I say we're on the right track, but it's, yeah, yeah. All right, seeing no other further comment, public comment? Yes, sir. Good evening.
Peter Schaefer, 15 East Street. The previous map you had up where the traffic X was, my house is right just left of that. So I live in that area. And many years ago, when the Renaissance project was proposed, I actually spoke in favor of it. I mean, there were some very nice things that they were saying that they were going to do there. I'm still not opposed to it, but I want to point out is that what we have today and what we are contemplating isn't anything near what we were told was going to happen, okay? Right now, we've lost the skate park because of the first part of this development, and we're going to lose this field. I think we're going to lose it. I mean, they're going to build buildings there. I don't see that really going away. That area needs redevelopment. I'm not against redeveloping that whole area, Cobia Ruthier and Henry Hanger, all of that. I think it's reasonable to put a lot of development down there. It's old construction, industrial development that's moving out anyway. You got to put something in there. The fact, though, is that there's a community here right now already, okay? And they've lost the skate park. They're losing this field, so they're losing things, okay? Not only that, we're getting perhaps thousands of people in that area, okay? And the question is, what are they going to do, okay? You're taking stuff away. You're not providing any services. You're just taking stuff away, and you're packing more people in. Nothing against it, as long as it's a healthy urban environment that we're building here. I'm not opposed to having something that's a linear environment, along the water. If it can't be a ball field, even if it's something linear, because people have to go somewhere, And right now, where are these people going to go? They're going to go. Most of these people in those developments don't even have little patios or anything. When they go outside, where do they go? What do they do? Okay, so in terms of a healthy environment, you have to consider all these other pieces. And right now, it's going to get redeveloped. It's going to be high density. There's a very good justification for it because we get the trains coming in, hopefully, okay? So higher the density, better off, they can use those trains, because people don't want to go forever to get to the train station either. So I see a lot of positives here, but potentially, but they're all potentials because no one's putting any money to anything that is helping to develop the urban character of that area. They're just putting a lot of apartments up. And in fact, that apartment you're talking about here now, they were going to have mixed things, not just apartments. What they were going to have, and in fact, Dunkin' Donuts wanted to put a store over there because they've got one on the other side, on East Hollis. And in the morning when cars come in, they would like to have people to go in the Dunkin' Donuts there. And then when they come, in the evening, going back over to Hudson, there's a Dunkin' Donuts on that side. But apparently they didn't like that. What I'm saying is there really ought to be more than just, housing. It just seems to me, years ago, an extreme case, years in the 60s, they used to build these very dense populated areas because they felt that was a really good idea. And then 20 years later, they dynamited them. I'm not saying that's what we're doing here, but I'm saying is there's got to be a mix and it's got to be healthy. And I'm not, because I said there's really a community there. It's not like we're not there already. No one's talking about us. We live there now. And all these changes are occurring and they need to be balanced somehow. And that area by the river is probably one of the most beautiful areas in the whole city if there was a linear park there. And you keep hearing people talking about this, and even with where the X is now, they're gonna redevelop that, they're gonna rebuild that, and they were talking about potentially, because I asked them to maybe put a playground there, a few other things there, there'll be some nice trees there either way. But there's no money being allocated for it. In other words, before we were told about a bunch of things that were gonna be, boat docks in the Nashua River and all of that, and of course, none of that ever really happened. So people keep talking about very nice area along the river, but nothing's ever happening. So, but apartments are happening. So I'm saying is they ought to both be happening at the same time, so we have a developed community. I don't know how you go about doing that. The other thing I was thought about a little while ago was that, the first phase that they already built, for example, that was city property, just like this other one is, and the city sold it to the developer, and the developer put these apartments on there. What I think the city could have done, because the city controls the property along the river, because that's a levee, and the city actually controls that, okay? So, but when they sold it, they just sold it outright, rather than having rather than deciding that they were gonna have a right-of-way. The city could have, it was their property, they could have put a right-of-way on it, so to make sure people could go down to the river, but they just sold it outright. So what happens is that, in theory, you can't really go through that property if you live in the area, because that's private property, okay, to get to there. Now, there are ways of getting there. Now, this other property we have right now that they're selling, okay, you've got the same situation, okay? It's city property, but we're selling it outright. We should have we should put something in there that basically says there's a right-of-way without interfering with what the developer is gonna do. There's no reason why we couldn't say there has to be a way to get back to the river. Okay, for example, some pathway that is a right-of-way that the city controls before they sell it. And if it's an agreement with the developer, it doesn't get in the developer's way, because there's gotta be a road in there anyway. So, what I'm saying is, we ought to think a little more in more detail about how we ought to make sure we have this healthy environment, because after you give it away, it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Remarks by Alderman? Okay, no need for a non-public session. Alderman Schmidt.
I move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn is in order. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we're adjourned at 8:17. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Thank you.